Welcome, friends. Thank you so much for clicking play on this video and joining me, Bill Donahue, with my dear friend and colleague at the Institute, Christopher West.
Hello, Bill.
Brother, I'm excited to just kick back and relax into a conversation about your brand new book, Eating the Sunrise.
You know what I like about this?
What is that?
You know this. I mean, when you're writing, you're like immersed in your own kind of inner world, and you have these words coming out and these ideas that you really want to convey.
Yes.
And I'm just looking forward to actually bouncing off. You know, I want to
Right.
hear what you thought. I want to.
Yes.
Yeah, and we're looking at chapter 1 today, and if this goes well, we'll look at other chapters in future videos.
This could be a series. So the book is actually our second. We just started the Theology of the Body Institute Press
A couple years ago.
a couple years ago. God is Beauty was our first publication, and this is our second publication, Eating the Sunrise. So yeah, Christopher, I'm very excited. Meditations on the liturgy and our hunger for beauty. And
So we see a theme here. God is beauty.
God is beauty. Eating the Sunrise is meditations on our hunger for beauty. Yeah. Could be a trinity of books coming. Wink, wink. That's a subtle. But I want to stop at the cover because that's where I think many of us will stop. Eating the Sunrise, Christopher. I'll share my own, like, not knowing the backstory of how you came up with that title, but
So you didn't read the back cover.
I didn't read the back cover yet. Only read chapter 1 so far.
All right. So
But-
how did it strike you?
I love it. It strikes me as that's what I want to do. That's what I've always wanted to do with anything beautiful. There's this idea of I want to consume. And this is a random thought, but you know, George Bailey, It's a Wonderful Life.
Yeah, the moon.
Yeah.
I'll lasso the moon.
And not only that, he wants to eat the moon and it'll shoot out of him.
Yeah.
But he also, at the end of the movie, when the kids come running down the stairs, oh, kids, I could eat you.
Yeah, I could eat you.
So this idea of consuming, eating.
Yeah, we want to take it in. The title
Yeah.
came from a student of ours and common friend, Evan Lemoyne.
Mm-hmm.
When he was a student here at the Institute years ago, we were talking, as we always do here, about beauty and just the hunger of the heart for beauty. And isn't it interesting we use that word? It's a hunger. It's a pining. It's a thirst.
Yeah.
And Evan said to me after one of the sessions in class, he said, Christopher, when I see a sunrise, I don't want to just behold it. And he said, I can barely put in words. I want to eat it. I want to take it in. And that always stayed with me. And I referenced that story in the book. And, you know, when you write a book, you're like, what should I call this book? And I had like
So important.
10 different options for what to call the book. And I showed my wife, and most of them were a little more like technical and descriptive of the book,
Sure.
which you can do in the subtitle. And this was the only kind of poetic title I had in my list of 10.
It has to be poetry.
And Wendy said, there it is. It's that. It's Eating the Sunrise. You got to call the whole book Eating the Sunrise. Like,
Wow.
yeah.
The feminine genius strikes again.
Yeah.
That's awesome. But yeah, so we're going to dive into it. We're going to start talking about chapter 1, but this does set the tone about who beauty is
Yeah.
and our relation to beauty. It is not a distanced, sort of, interesting curvilinear shapes there. I like the texture. It's like,
Yeah,
this is an invitation into communion.
Amen,
And
because-
consummation.
Meditations on liturgy, right? This book is ultimately about the Eucharist,
Mass.
the Mass, and the whole idea of eating the sunrise is a very fitting image
Yes.
for what we do in the Mass.
Exactly.
I have a chapter later in the book where I talk about why does the Church traditionally pray her liturgy towards the land of the rising sun, towards the east. Well, Psalm 19, the sun comes forth like a bridegroom from its tent.
Right.
And we are the bride in the liturgy, right? The liturgy, as JP2 says, is the sacrament of the bridegroom and the bride. The Mass, the Eucharist, is the sacrament of the bridegroom and of the bride. We face east in traditional Christian prayer because we're the bride awaiting the coming of the bridegroom.
Right.
And if the sunrise is properly an image of the bridegroom coming, well, guess what we do in the Mass? We eat the sunrise.
Crazy.
It's not, I mean, it's a metaphor in one sense, but in another sense, the sun is just a pale image
Exactly.
of what we're eating. The sunrise is just a pale image of what we're actually doing. JP2 says in his encyclical on the Eucharist, he's quoting some early Christian writer. He says, when we consume the Eucharist, we eat fire. We eat fire. And don't just think like a little match. Like the sun, which if the earth were a mile closer to the sun, we'd all be charred to a crisp.
Right.
If we were a mile further away, we'd all freeze. The earth is right in the place where the sun's heat can give us life. The imagery here is so deep and so profound. And one of the things that comes out in the book is we've lost a cosmic sense of liturgy. Cardinal Ratzinger, when he wrote his book, Spirit of the Liturgy, before he was Pope Benedict XVI, he says, in the modern world, understanding of the liturgy, both among priests and among laity, is deficient to a deplorable extent. Yikes. We don't know what the liturgy is anymore. And the reason we don't know what the liturgy is, I argue in here, is because we've lost a sacramental view of the world.
Yes.
We've lost that sacramental lens. We've reduced the world to what science can tell us about it. And of course, we rejoice in all science can tell us about the world. But when we reduce all that exists to what science can tell us about it, we lose the poetry. We no longer have a poetic way of understanding. We no longer have a sacramental way of understanding. We no longer view the world as a work of art. Our language becomes technical. And there are places for technical. I want my surgeon to have technical language.
Yeah, proficient.
Yeah, I want him to know his science, right? I want my pilot on the airplane to know his science and know his technical language. But I also want to hear poetry about what it's like to fly, right? I also want to hear poetry about the meaning of the human body, and especially human sexuality. When we lose the poetry, we lose the sacramentality, meaning we no longer understand that the things of this world are signs that point us to another world.
We lose the verticality also.
Yeah.
Whereas the reductionistic technique, just flattens everything. And again, you can travel far on the horizon, towards the horizon. You can see a lot.
Yeah.
But you're never gonna defy gravity and lift off.
Yeah, that's the purpose of this book. It's lift off.
Gravity defying. Yeah, this is pulling us up into
gravity. Yeah,
You're welcome.
That's the goal.
That'll be the second.
To fly. To
It is because the sunrise. Again,
Yeah.
you're going up. Well, I love that we haven't even cracked the cover open yet. So,
what were your initial impressions of chapter one?
Again, let me linger on the cover still.
Okay.
This is the title itself, and there's a beautiful, very Catholic image on the cover of a monstrance, and we can see, if you're Catholic, you can understand this is adoration of the Blessed Sacrament. And
My daughter Beth did that.
yeah, it's beautiful. Yeah, Beth is so talented. But there's also this sort of wide net that anybody could pick this book up.
Yeah.
My sense, reading chapter 1, reading even the first quote, which I'll read in a minute, is that anybody can pick this book up, and everybody really should, because we need to be reoriented.
Yeah.
And to your point about the liturgy and the facing the east, we are so disoriented today. We need reorientation.
Amen.
Oriens in Latin is the east.
Is the
and that's
east.
where we're supposed to look.
And here are just a couple other pointers about being oriented towards the east and the sunrise. What are we celebrating at every liturgy? We're celebrating Easter.
East, right? The resurrection,
Easter,
rising.
and what day?
Sunday.
Sunday. Easter Sunday.
So wait a minute.
Wait a minute. Is there a connection
Could be
here?
a theme here, something. Well, yeah. So again, disorienting, foggy days that we live in, very confusing, losing a sense of the transcendence, losing verticality, eating the sunrise.
Let the sun reorient us.
Reorienting my hunger and thirst to what truly satisfies in the end. So let's crack this puppy open,
Let's do it.
Christopher. Let's go. Okay. So chapter 1, and again, this is just a laid back, relaxed conversation about what strikes us. Yeah. The fact that you quoted Edgar Allan Poe is awesome.
Right at the
now,
start.
A lot of people talk about reorienting. When I was in high school, we had to read, The Telltale Heart and Follow the House of Usher. And Edgar Allan Poe, for me, was like, oh, man, this dude is heavy. This is dark. But there's a beautiful side to Edgar Allan Poe.
Yeah.
And a thirst for beauty. So here's an opening quote. The origin of poetry lies in a thirst for a wilder beauty than earth supplies. And he capitalizes beauty.
Yeah. Yeah. There it is.
That just redeemed my whole high school career. Having to read Edgar Allan
I'm
Poe
happy to
dark
do that
stories.
for you,
Yeah,
Bill.
thank you. Appreciate it.
I am not a student of Edgar Allan Poe by any stretch of the imagination, and I don't even remember where I came across this. You like me, you come across quotes and you
grab it.
pull it, put it in your quote file,
Yes.
and then you pull it out when you need it. I mean, that was that kind of experience for me. Like, I just thought this set the tone for the whole book. Poetry is a language of the heart. Again, we need technical language when you're flying an airplane and when you're operating on somebody and in all kinds of other situations. But there's another place that language comes from when our hearts get pierced by beauty.
Right.
And sometimes it's just, it's those groans of the spirit that are deeper than words. And it's the skilled poet who is able to put words to these experiences. And we kind of have to grope for words because we all have these experiences of beauty that you're like stunned or it almost hurts. Beauty can wound us like a wound of beauty.
Yeah.
I remember this one time years ago, I was driving with my family to, I don't know, my parents' house or something, and this U2 song comes on that I've heard 1,000 times. It's One.
Oh, yeah.
The song One, but it just starts with these delicate guitar notes. Diddle-oo, doo-doo-doo-doo, ba-da-doo-doo. And I heard those notes thousands of times, but all of a sudden I was like, oh, mercy. And tears are welling up in my eyes. And Wendy looks over me. I'm driving the car and she's like, what's wrong? I said, the beauty, it just got me. Oh, it got me. And I couldn't put any words to it. I could just groan.
Well, that's the thing. That is the proper, I think, response to beauty is you turn into a big pile of mush or tears or groanings, inexpressible groanings, or you start like similes, metaphors, music, something lyrical.
Yeah.
You have to express somehow because you're singing.
Yeah.
Which, we just talked about this in the last course I taught, but in the beginning there was music. And then it came down into poetry. And we use functional prose today when we talk to each other.
Right.
But our culture is lowering it even further into like LOL.
Right.
But we're made for so much more.
Yeah, we're made, as Edgar Allan Poe says here, for this wilder beauty than earth supplies.
Yes, and the whole created world, let's look at the first story you share here.
Yeah.
The whole created world is sacramental in a certain sense because there's an artist who made it. So it is artistic. It is art. He made it.
Yeah, if you want to get into the heart of Michelangelo, study his masterpiece.
Right.
Right? If you want to get into the heart of God, look at what he's created.
Creation.
And especially look at his masterpiece, male and female. He created them.
Exactly.
So it's going to reveal.
Lingering there, gazing, wasting time, which I think is a theme of this whole book.
Yeah,
it's
it
really
is.
this idea of where are you running off to? Why are you in a rush? You share in the opening pages of chapter 1 here this experience of the redbud tree, as you call it. I don't know if that's the Latin technical name there, but that's what it is.
Yeah,
it's the redbud
it's
tree.
a redbud tree.
But how it's a seasonal gift of God that comes to you every May, which is a season of life.
Yeah.
But what it's tinged with is the passing.
Yeah, the sadness.
Is the sadness that this is only happening in May.
I love this tree and I hate this tree. I'm in this love-hate relationship with this tree because these red buds, I don't know why we call them a red bud tree because they're more purple. Yeah. These buds that pop. And I'm like, oh, there's the beauty again. And then there's this wrestling because in 3 weeks, if that, all of those buds are going to be on the ground, brown and shriveling. And I hate that. And what does that tell me that I hate that? If I'm honest, if I look at why that irks me, like really, like I almost resent the tree because you're teasing me. Mm-hmm. You're awakening my thirst for beauty. Mm-hmm. I get to behold you for a very brief time, and then the beauty dies. And I don't like that.
What I like though, Christopher, is in this very first chapter, you're getting us to get philosophical.
Yeah.
And Socrates once said, "Wisdom begins in wonder." Mm. When you just ask yourself, why am I feeling these things? Yeah. Again, think of our culture where we're just flick, doom scrolling.
Yeah.
What a pathetic thing that is. We call it.
Is that a phrase?
Doom scrolling. Yes.
I've never heard that.
Doom scrolling is just because it's mostly just like,
right.
But to allow yourself to be hit by created reality and then to enter into a contemplative questioning, why am I loving and hating this experience so much? I mean, so for me, as I read that and felt and connected with your pain, I have my own redbud trees.
What are redbud trees for you? Yeah,
a redbud tree for me is when we were growing up in South Central New Jersey, surrounded by cranberry bogs and blueberry fields. My youth. We had these trumpeter swans come it was either late November, early December. They'd stay for a couple months in the winter. Trumpeter swans from way up north would come down by the hundreds, and they would land in these cranberry bogs. And they're just blazing white, like pristine, glorious white. And true to the name, trumpeter swans. Like there's just trumpets blasting across the water, open water of the bogs. So you've got just that sort of burnt orange, brownish bogs now who've passed into winter mode. You've got these glorious white swans and this mournful trumpet sound rolling over the top of the water. And you're all bundled up, and you've got your hot chocolate and you're just listening to these swans and it's just, you love it and you hate it.
Yeah, and
because it's just getting in your gut and just and you know what? In a month and a half, you guys are gone.
Yeah,
and I have to wait all year to hear that music again. This music that sort of wrecks me, but I love it.
Well, I'm reminded of the liturgical year. These things that come up year after year, and it's related. The liturgy is timed with the things of
cosmic.
Yeah, it's cosmic, right? We have Christmas. It works in the northern hemisphere. It doesn't work so well in the southern hemisphere. Right. But in the northern hemisphere, Christmas makes sense because what has just happened, the solstice, and now the darkness, days are getting shorter, and then boom, days are getting longer. The sun is coming. The light of the world is upon us, right? Mm-hmm. That's the celebration of Christmas. Right. So there's a cosmic rhythm. Pay attention to the rhythm of nature, and don't think this is just some new agey thing, right? Catholics need to take this back. Christians need to take.
Yes.
Whose creation is this?
Yes.
This is God's, and God made His creation to speak to us. The Catechism is so clear on this. It says the first message of God is not the Bible; it's creation.
Yes.
Creation itself.
I love that you're pointing that out, Christopher. There's a favorite quote of mine from Pope Benedict. This is my treasure chest of quotes. The first discovery of God is through a contemplation of creation.
Yeah.
And you're right to name it. Like I think many Catholics who would say that they're Orthodox and faithful can sometimes get a little knee-jerk reaction when we start talking about stewardship of creation, the environment. Yeah. But don't let the evil one hijack that. Don't let him sully it. It is God's first book. And by reading it, by wasting time and by wandering in it, by asking questions, which that's part of your chapter 1 here, just made me think about it, where Augustine says, where is that bit? Augustine says, question the beauty of the skies, question the seas, question everything.
Here it is. It's about on page 20. St. Augustine invites us to the experience of theophany. In theophany, what is theophany? It's this
Yeah.
These Greek words that mean to show God, right? When we have that experience of a sunrise where we're just in absolute awe and we're overwhelmed by beauty that lifts our hearts to the heavens, that's theophany. When you hear a song like that song I was hearing on the radio I shared, and you're pierced by beauty, these can be sacred moments of theophany, of encounters with the holy, the sacred, the divine. And this is right out of the Catechism, this quote from Augustine. So Augustine invites us to the experience of theophany with this challenge. Question the beauty of the earth. Question the beauty of the sea. Question the beauty of the sky. And I'll add, question the beauty of the redbud trees.
Yes.
Right? Question all these realities. All of them respond, see, we are beautiful. Their beauty is a profession, says Augustine. These beauties, however, are subject to change. And that's what makes me so sad about that dang redbud tree. The beauty doesn't last. It's subject to change. It's fleeting. Those beautiful buds are going to die and fall to the ground. And what that tells me, if I'm paying attention, if I'm willing to enter into that moment of theophany, that with a contemplative attitude, I'm going to recognize in my stillness, in my paying attention, I don't want those to die. What does that tell me? I want a beauty that isn't fleeting.
Yeah.
I want, my heart demands a beauty that lasts forever. Now, let's just stay with that for a minute. My heart demands a beauty that lasts forever. Somewhere in here, if I can find it quickly, I quote from Nietzsche. How do you say his name?
Or Nietzsche. It's
Nietzsche.
pronounced two ways. I've heard it pronounced both ways.
Yeah, so this is on page 22.
Father of modern atheism, but so insightful.
Yeah,
Press in. Go ahead.
Hold your thumb there on page 20, Bill, but jump ahead to page 22 towards the bottom. The future Pope Benedict XVI observed, we all experience that primordial sensation which Nietzsche expressed in the words, all joy wills eternity, wills deep, deep eternity. What is glimpsed in some moments, like the redbud, right, should never end. That it does end is the real sadness of human existence.
Incredible.
So that's my experience of that redbud tree, and that's why I start there. And Augustine here gives us the path of pilgrimage from created beauty to uncreated beauty. In other words, from fleeting beauty to lasting beauty. That's what he's calling us to here.
And there's other ways to phrase that. The iconography of reality, the sacramentality of reality, which is a distinct human call, vocation, summons that we have to see differently.
Yeah.
And we have to sit in it. This is the whole point, I think, of this first chapter is reawakening. Here's the challenge, I think, Christopher, as we're reading this, and we've been swimming in this ocean for a while.
Yeah.
Praise Jesus, right?
Yeah.
But how to wake people up, even to the idea that you're made for this.
Yeah.
And that this is what it means to be human, that you are athirst. Don't keep shutting it down. Don't keep doom scrolling or just popping popcorn of pleasure into your mouth. Stop, be still.
And don't squash it either. Like we can have this hyper pious notion of holiness that that my attraction to the beauty of a redbud tree or my attraction to that song on the radio is a distraction from my holiness.
Yes, the pendulum can swing both extreme ways. There's just a memory. When we were kids, we used to go up to Maine every summer and spend weeks and weeks up there. And we hiked the terminus of the Appalachian Trail, Mount Katahdin. And I know your dad did that years ago. Well, there's a path called the Knife's Edge. It's crazy.
My dad has told me about it.
At one point, it's only 3 feet wide.
Yeah.
If there's any breath of a breeze, you're like, don't take the knife's edge. But I feel like the Lord, with this whole sacramentality of reality, is saying, I want you to walk the knife's edge.
Oof.
I want you to take that crazy path where I could slip into idolatry or I could just shove it all down. Like, no, I want you to walk this line because it's so fun.
Yeah.
And
It's the
such
greatest
an
adventure there is.
It is the greatest adventure. And be not afraid.
Yeah,
Be
the
not
Catechism says it very well, and I quote it somewhere in the book, that the journey of the Christian life is the journey from the sign to the reality signified. And this is what liturgy is. It's taking us on a journey into signs. Think of all the physical, sensual realities that are part of a liturgy, from incense to music to fire to flowers on the altar to the bread and the wine, all of it. And of course, our bodies. You can't have a liturgy without our bodies, because the source and summit of liturgy of the Mass is the body of Christ.
You can't have consummation without that penetration of both. You can't have it.
Right.
It's not a digital download with the Lord.
It's
It's like it will penetrate your flesh. You will consume me in the Eucharist.
So it's sensual, meaning it's through the senses. Everything begins with our bodies and our senses. Yeah. Every spiritual experience, let me put it that way, every divine encounter, every spiritual experience begins with our bodies and our senses. And this is what Augustine is getting at here. He's calling us on this pilgrimage. He says, look at the beauty of the earth, question the beauty of the sea, question the beauty of the sky, question all these realities. All of them respond, see, we are beautiful. These beauties, however, are subject to change. Who made them? If not the capital B, beautiful one, who is not subject to change. And then I go on to say, this is a quote, these are my own words. The fact that these beauties of the world are subject to change and are thus fleeting can make us sad indeed. But that sadness can also open us to the hope of participating in the life of the beautiful one, capital B, who is not subject to change. And then I love this from Carol Houselander.
Yes. I was just going to talk
Why
about
don't you
this
take
bit.
it from there?
She's one of my favorite spiritual writers.
Yeah,
as
she's
well.
great.
Carol Houselander, a real mystic. But there's the end of this quote. I want to share a story about that. But she says, if our minds are, quote from her, illuminated by the ray of the divine light, we will know in every passing simple happiness, in the brief loveliness of the senses, the eternal now. And that's those three words. When I was able to name the nameless in a way, in other words, understand that it was God himself coming through all the stuff I loved. I was in the seminary at the time. I'm sure it hit me before that, but I had a couple of buddies, and we would just get together to, listen to good music, share a bit of poetry, some Hopkins. We were nerding out. We were in our studies of philosophy. But it might just be us sitting in a dorm room, backs against the wall, lights out, maybe a candle lit. Somebody throws in, Bibel's Ave Maria, or the soundtrack from Henry V, something like that. And we called our little group the Nunc Aeternum, the eternal now. Reading Carol Houselander, and she drops it, the eternal now. That's what I go back to. Yeah. And by the way, that was 25, 30 years ago, and I still remember leaning against that wall, hearing Bibel's Ave Maria for the first time, played from some, radio through a CD. And how can I go back to that instantly? Because the senses have been subsumed, taken up. The eternal now has penetrated it through receiving this gift, which again is, to your point, is sensual, but let's reclaim that word.
Amen.
God comes to us through our senses. All knowledge, Aquinas says, comes to us through our senses. And what are we afraid of? We're afraid of idolatry, but the Lord's like, I'm giving it to you anyway, and I want you to abide in it and hear me in it and taste me literally in it. Yeah,
the Catechism talks about this danger, that the danger of a sacramental world is idolatry, that we absolutize the finite beauty, that we cling to it, that we say, that's what I want.
Right.
And the purpose of finite beauty, it's kind of I was about to say it's almost like a cruel trick, but that would be very cynical.
But I get your point.
Yeah, but the cruel trick here is that finite beauty awakens in us a desire that it can't satisfy.
Right.
It can awaken it, and it is meant to awaken it. Why did God make all these beautiful things? to enable our senses to participate in beauty itself.
Yes.
Beauty has this ability to awaken a yearning to participate in the ultimate mystery. And so we should rejoice in these sensual things without absolutizing them. And that's where we need to go on a painful, and I explain this in great detail in the book, a painful journey of inner purification. Yeah. And what happens is we don't come to desire these beautiful things less. We come to desire them more because we come to desire them rightly.
Yes.
We
It
appreciate
stretches our
them.
hearts.
It's when our hearts are rightly oriented towards ultimate beauty, we don't appreciate the beauty of this world less. We appreciate it more because we appreciate it rightly.
I want to insert a John Paul II here. He says, when he talks about opening ourselves to Eros, and I know
Yes.
we'll get in, we talk about that very, very much at the Institute, that Greek word for the inner power that draws us to what's true, good, and beautiful. He says, he's talking about opening ourselves to it. He says, this is a task worthy of man. Remember that?
Yes.
This is a task worthy of man.
This truly can happen, and it is a task truly worthy of man.
This expansion. Because again, ask yourself, well, who made these things that are making you groan as if you've been pierced by a dart?
Yeah.
Who is giving you these created gifts? It's not the devil. It's God. So I think it is I like the language of a cruel trick, And the saints and mystics talk about this. Saint Faustina calls Jesus the divine madman. Did you read that quote? The divine
I don't know that I've heard that.
madman.
Yeah.
Because he's just slaying us with so much beauty, goodness, mercy, just tender affections through so many delicate marvels in the world. And I don't think he wants to just like shove it down and just like say the rosary. I love the rosary. But it's like just that is also prayer.
Yeah.
That is
Amen.
also prayer. This is the sacramentality reality and lingering in it. Because what's it going to do? It's going to dilate the heart. It's going to stretch and expand your heart. Well, what's the point of all that? So you get more God.
Yeah.
It breaks your heart and opens your heart up so more of the infinite God of love can come in.
And here we see precisely the difference between a human being and an animal, a mere animal.
Yes.
Because, you were telling me you like Fulton Sheen and the
ahead,
horse.
I'll find it.
You want to talk about that? It's
Yes.
bottom of page 19.
And this is another favorite, just going way back. We have our little guides by the side in our life. And, for me, Bishop Fulton Sheen's definitely one of them since I was a teenager. But he talks about the sense of humor that we have, which, again, uniquely human. Hyenas really don't laugh. It's not, they don't get the joke. You can play Brian Regan videos forever, and the hyena's not going to get it. Shout out to Brian Regan. That was for free. But Bishop Sheen on 19 says, a person is said to have a sense of humor if he can see through things. One lacks a sense of humor if he cannot see through things. Our Lord had a divine sense of humor. Now, just pause right there because that's great.
Yeah, that is great.
Because sometimes our holy cards of Jesus are just sort of this sort of stoic or serious. It's like, did you ever have
I love the
fun?
eyebrow. That's
Thank you.
good.
Yeah. But I think, especially hanging out with the apostles, he must have laughed a lot. So he has this sense of humor because he revealed that the universe was sacramental. And then he goes into the idea that there's a visible component you can see, smell, taste, touch, but then there's an invisible. And I'm going to jump ahead just a wee bit here. Bishop Fulton Sheen says, page 20, a horse can hear a funny story just as well as a man. It's conceivable that the horse may hear the words better than the man. That's technically, right?
Right.
And at the end of the story, the man may laugh, but the horse will never give a horse laugh. The reason is that the horse gets only the material side. Mr. Ed. That's a shout out to the old timers, right? The horse doesn't really laugh. He says the reason is the horse gets only the material side of the sacrament, the sound, but the man, we get the invisible. I mean, when I
the meaning.
For me,
we get the meaning. The horse
idea
doesn't
that-
understand the meaning.
And the idea that only I can do that makes me feel so ennobled, invited. I get thrilled by that call to see through.
Yeah.
And it takes me back. There's a great book by Walker Percy called Lost in the Cosmos, the last great self-help book. Great book. Very sarcastic and hilarious. But he talks about the whole universe of creatures is dyadic relationships, just stuff bumping up against other stuff.
What does he mean, dyadic? What is
like
it?
two.
Two, right?
So just like 1, 2, bumping into each other and reacting.
Right.
But he says with the human person, suddenly we have a triadic relationship. Suddenly symbol, meaning, metaphor, poetry.
Because we have this other dimension
This,
that we can
this
enter.
triadic,
Right.
this third dimension enters in. It's the invisible.
So can we say with the horse and the joke, it's dyadic?
It's just a
The
sound hitting its
He hears
horse
sounds
ear.
in his
Right.
ear, but there's no vertical. There's no meaning
vertical,
to it.
Invisible
Powerful.
symbol.
Wow,
or
that's great.
meaning. But so, and then you think of the Trinity, right? The life of the Trinity in us. But we have triadic vision. So
Ooh, I love it.
yeah, and that's why we stop in our tracks when we encounter beauty. We're like, whoa. But you don't see chipmunks stopping
Yeah,
to
yeah,
look
yeah.
at a sunrise.
Yeah, you can. I mean, animals have some perception of sounds and bright
And
colors.
it can be incredibly technically proficient. I mean,
Yeah.
a hawk's vision is
Yeah.
amazing.
Yeah.
But they don't have the supernatural vision,
Right.
sacramental vision.
Right. And this is the tragedy of the modern world. We have lost such a vision. And this is what Jesus is lamenting when he says, they look, but they do not see.
Exactly, yes.
They look, but they do not see. He laments in another part of the gospel where he says, we played the flute for you, but you did not dance. We sang the dirge, but you did not mourn. And such people have, and I'm guilty of it, we become, in our busy lives, in our, just the nose to the grindstone, day-to-day reality of providing for a family and whatever your life might be, you can just become anesthetized to beauty. And share with our viewers what anesthetized
The
means.
aesthetic, of course, is that word for beauty, but anesthetized is numbed to beauty.
Numb to
How
beauty.
tragic. We should be esthetized. I think you said that.
Amen.
We should
Amen.
be esthetized constantly.
I remember, here's just one example of it. A few years ago, I'm sitting at you've been in my kitchen many times. I'm just sitting at the kitchen table. I'm eating my bowl of cereal in the morning or whatever. And I look up. I was like, oh my gosh, those flowers are beautiful. Wendy, when did we get these flowers? She said, they've been sitting on the table for about 5 days. I sat at that table for 3 meals a day for 5 days and hadn't noticed
Wild.
the beauty of these flowers. They were just kind of blending into my kitchen. And all of a sudden I had this moment where I saw the flowers.
That's the whole thing of being present, like the holy present or the sacrament of the present moment, is that we should, and I fail too here quite often, right? That this embodied existence, not walking through your house with this. It's a tragedy for me when I'm walking in the morning and I'm seeing the high school kids walk into school.
Yeah.
None of them are looking up. 1 out of 20, maybe.
Mercy.
They're all staring down. But you're missing everything. Which, and everything, to go back to Carol Houselander, she says basically God is sending love letters,
Oh,
like constantly.
oh,
Constantly. But we can just let them
Yeah.
fly by. We can miss them. But this is an invitation not to miss.
that's exactly what this book is. It's an invitation, as I say in this chapter, on the one hand, to laugh with the sacramentality of the world and
To cry.
to cry, to learn how to weep, right? Jesus says we have to learn how to dance to the flute and mourn to the dirge. And these two go together so that rejoicing in the beauty of the redbud tree, I need to learn how to rejoice. But I also have to learn how to weep when those red buds fall to the ground and they're dead. And in that tension is the Paschal mystery itself of death and resurrection.
Yeah.
The sorrowful mysteries come before the glorious mysteries.
Yeah.
We have to be willing to, unless the grain of wheat, fall to the ground and die. Look at Jesus himself appealing to the reality of nature to teach us this spiritual lesson.
Yeah.
Unless the grain of wheat fall and die, it remains a grain of wheat.
You just came full circle because that's how you start off with this image of the tree. And if there's anything pregnant with meaning in creation is trees.
Yeah,
Because
yeah,
they have this life cycle, generally speaking, right? Most trees have this life cycle where there's this blossoming and blooming, and then there's this stripping away and purification and seeming death. But press in, this is the whole Paschal mystery right here,
Yeah.
right in front of you, and feel it. Don't run from it. Don't get anesthetized to it. Gaze at it, linger in it, and you'll discover something of the mystery of God and yourself. And I think also in chapter 1, you talk about, what is the human being? We're literally defined as this infinite thirst. We are a hunger. Father Thomas Dubé says we are an incarnate thirst. We are.
That's what we are, yeah.
Incarnate thirst. So don't run from that reality or identity. Sit in it, and don't numb yourself to it. Just be the thirst. Be the thirst.
Yeah, it where I get tripped up in my own appreciation of beauty is precisely in the resistance of the death part. I don't want to suffer the loss. I don't want to be that grain of wheat that also falls to the ground and dies. Mm-hmm. And when I refuse that dying part, I have two options. I either latch on to the beauty in an idolatrous way and demand something of it that it can't give me,
yeah,
or I anesthetize myself and I just shut down and I don't even want to pay attention to that redbud tree. I don't even want beauty to come to me. I'm just going to numb myself, do my daily duty, and get on with my life. Either way, it's inhuman. Mm-hmm. Either way, I'm terribly damaging my own humanity. I have to learn how to rejoice in the beauty of this world, and I have to learn to weep when I come face to face with the fleetingness of beauty. And there is something, you put your finger on it, there is something about trees.
Yes.
Right? One of the first things the Bible says is God planted all of these trees that were so delightful to behold.
Yes.
What is it about a tree? Almost everybody can point to a favorite tree that we had as children in our backyard or at the local park, or we have these gorgeous trees in our backyard. When we bought our house 20 years ago, there were twin trees that came out of the same root system and then branched off, huge, like 60, 70 feet up into the sky. 10 years ago, one of these twin trees got struck by lightning and came down. And I went out in the storm seeing this tree having come down, and I almost couldn't give myself permission to feel the loss, to feel how sad I actually felt, because I loved this tree. And I quote much later in the book, at the very end, this poem from JP2. I'm jumping ahead. Maybe I think I'm going to leave the readers to...
Teaser.
Yeah, teaser. Where so I begin the book with this experience of the tree and the mourning of the fleeting beauty. And then I end the book with a poem from JP2 where he talks about connecting the death and resurrection of Jesus with the loss of beauty in a tree. Mm. And that's our hope, that all of creation will be renewed. Somehow, some way, I don't know how, but St. Paul says it very clearly, right? All of creation is groaning, waiting for us, you and me, and the whole of humanity to say yes to the redemption of our bodies. Because if we say yes to the redemption of our bodies, guess what else follows? The redemption of the whole created world. So somehow that tree will be restored to me. Right? My favorite tree when I was a boy was this huge towering pine in our backyard. I knew that thing, I could climb it with my eyes closed because I knew where every branch was.
Yes.
And there was this spot high up that had perfect arm rests and perfect leg rests. And I'd go up there, I'd put in my one earbud transistor radio thing, and I'd wait for my favorite song to come on FM 97. And the tree, if it were blowing, if there's a breezy day and my favorite song was on, there are a couple moments like this. Favorite song, breezy day, the tree is swaying, I'm sitting up there. I was in heaven and I didn't even know it. Like it was a real experience of laughing with the sacramentality of the world.
Yes.
I obviously didn't know how to even articulate that when I was 10 years old.
Oh,
but years later, my family had moved out of that house when I was a late teenager. Years later, I came back and the tree was gone, cut down. And that was a moment of weeping with the sacramentality of the world. My tree is gone my tree is gone. So the laughing and the weeping,
Yeah.
it's
And I love, I love your sensitivity to it, Christopher. And I always love that about you, is that particular affinity, sensitivity to it. And it pains you. I know. I've seen you in pain. I've seen you in pain. I'm seeing you in pain now. Because, but it's worth it. It's worth it. And I know that's why God does it. Because he loved and made that tree from an acorn. He knew it.
Yeah.
Of course, he knows in his omnipotence that this is going to pierce you, pain you, give you great pleasure at the same time. But he's like, it's worth it. I'm going to do it. And he does it all the time with a million things. And I do see the tree as so constitutive of so many people's stories. My story as well. I can go back to trees. And then you throw in the tree of the cross.
Yeah, hello.
So like what? So there's so many layers to it all. And as you're talking about the tree, and this is maybe one off-jointed, but in one of my favorite books, The Lord of the Rings, just finished doing a course on Tolkien's great Sacramental stories and C.S. Lewis. There's a party tree, it's called, in the center of the Shire. And it's this great, glorious, giant tree. And one of the evil forces in this world comes and goes right to that tree and destroys it. And it breaks their hearts. The Scouring of the Shire, the end of the book, where you think battle's won, it's all great. They come back home and their sacred party tree that they love so much is destroyed. But here comes the Paschal mystery. The wonderful figure of Galadriel, which is a very Marian figure, very beautiful Marian figure. She gifts the little hobbit Samwise with a seed. And when the party tree is destroyed, he puts that Malorn seed in the soil. And it just, it makes, and it's better than before. And people come from all over to see this great Malorn, the greatest Malorn tree east.
All right, there it is.
There it is. Like
There's the whole mystery.
So it's better than before.
You just summed up
But
with the
it's still-
story what I say here, these 3 key points on page 24.
Let's do it.
All right. So can you quote there at the top from Griegel, Stanislaw Griegel, page 24, and then I'll go through the three points.
Oh my gosh, yeah. Reading this quote from him it's just
Stanislaw Griegel, just if you don't know who Stanislaw Griegel is, he was a personal friend of St. John Paul II's. He got his doctorate in theology under Wojtyła. So Wojtyła was his dissertation director. And
pressure.
I had the privilege then of studying under Stanislaw Griegel myself.
Griegel. So because when he taught at CUA, right?
No, at the JP2 Institute.
Oh, the JP2 Institute. Yeah. So Stanislav Griegel says, and this is so loaded, everybody. You're going to have to pause after this. Pause this video and just like relish it for a bit, then hit play again. The fascination of beauty is the only way to educate the person for the future. And he capitalizes future, the capital signifying one's ultimate future and destiny. There is no other way to educate the human person, for he belongs to beauty. Killer.
Bill, how do you, as a dad, educate your children for beauty? Like, share some of, you've shared stories, and I just love this, and I'll share a couple too, but I love how intentional you are about this with your kids.
Yeah, I mean, I try to, as best we can, unplug them very often or make the screen time very limited. And it's backyard bonfires or just the back deck is where I drink coffee, I smoke my pipe, I relax, we do homework when weather permits. So we're under our Japanese maple tree, which is gorgeous, any like spring, winter, summer, fall. We try to do hikes as much as we can, get them splashing around in the local streams and swimming holes. I love birds. I love bugs. I love it all. You know it's Christopher. So when I encounter something, I'm just like, whoa, check this out, and get my kids in it.
Yeah.
Get their senses engaged in it, because it'll leave, as it did, when my father was raising his 2 boys, myself and my brother, it will leave a memory.
Yeah, yeah.
And I'm fascinated. Beauty, my fascination with beauty has been my educator.
Yeah.
The Lord has educated me through beauty. And so I know how infectious it is. And, if my kids catch the infection, like, wow, Dad's really excited about this. What's going on?
Yeah.
When somebody else is passionate, like, why are you so passionate?
Yeah.
You'll catch some of the flames of that wonder.
Yeah, I think some of the most pointed memories of my childhood are camping trips with my dad, fishing trips with my dad. I remember like around a campfire, when I was a little kid, he would always put his hands, he knew I loved the smell of smoke, like when he had been doing the fire, and he'd as a little kid, I'd go up and grab his hand and like smell it. But later on, he would just put his hands out, and that meant it was my time to come up and smell the smoky smell on his hands. But those experiences that leave an imprint, it is an education in beauty and in our, as Griegel says, our destiny. We are made for beauty. Another name for God is beauty. God is beauty, as our other book title indicates. God is beauty. It's another name for God. Beauty with a capital B. We're intentional with our children as well. Like my certainly creeks and swimming holes and the ocean, the mountains. I've taken my kids on lots of camping and backpacking trips, and we live surrounded by woods. Wendy and I were very intentional. We wanted to raise our kids where they could run out in the woods and just play. I'm having a memory right now of one of my sons when he was 10 years old, and he had just recently got a BB gun, and he had been trying for weeks to hunt a squirrel. And I hear this rapping on the back door. I'm like, who the heck's knocking on our door? And I open the door, and Thomas is just standing there with a squirrel, holding it by the tail, and he's going, like breathing. And this was a moment of absolute sheer delight. And then we skinned the squirrel, we cooked it, we ate every last little bit of that squirrel. And that I talk a lot about eating in this book because the title is Eating the Sunrise.
Consummation, consume.
Right? Consume. We want to take in. Thomas, it was such a good lesson in life about, there was sadness that he killed a squirrel. There was a sense of victory. There's also sadness, and there's a little and cutting them open and all that stuff. But it teaches lessons about sacrifice, that something has to die in order for you to live.
Yeah.
All that stuff. And that brings us to these three, YouTube Live, let's make some noise.
Again.
Okay, I say here, what we learn along the way of this education in beauty can be summed up in these 3 points. Number 1, we are made to slake our thirst at the fountain of infinite beauty, capital B. That's what we're made for. Let's just pause there for a minute. Bill Dunahee. Juan Araguin. You are made. You are made. I am made. You, all you who are watching, you are made to slake your thirst at the fountain of infinite beauty. If we let that sink in, it changes everything. Right there is what we call the good news of the gospel.
Yeah.
And when we think the good news of the gospel, a lot of times we reduce it to, you're a sinner, you need a savior, your sins have been forgiven. Well, that's good news, man. I am a sinner. I absolutely am a sinner. But if I don't know that I'm made to slake my thirst at infinite beauty, I don't even know what it means to be a sinner. The very idea of being a sinner becomes an abstraction if I don't know that my fundamental truth is I am made for beauty.
Right.
I am made to slake my thirst at infinite beauty. Now I can know what sin is.
Let's unpack that real quick. Why did you sin? What were you looking for?
Beauty.
Just to break a rule? No, you were looking for
I'm looking for
beauty.
that which is going to satisfy my thirst.
Yeah.
But sin is to miss the mark. Right? Thomas Aquinas, when you sin, you're looking for something good, but you miss the mark.
Right.
Sin is to aim my desire for infinite satisfaction at something that cannot satisfy it. I have missed the mark. I have sinned. What is forgiveness of sins? It's not just, I forget that you did that. It also involves the reorientation of our desire towards what we really want. That's truly the forgiveness of our sins. It's not just, I wipe that away. Let's just pretend you never did anything, you never misdirected your desire. The good news of the gospel is that Christ wants to redirect our misdirected desires toward what we really desire. But there's a rub. There's a rub, and we talk about this in point 3. So again, point 1, we are made to slake our thirst at the fountain of infinite beauty. Why don't you read point 2, Bill?
Finite beauty is but a sign, Theophany, of infinite beauty.
So don't aim your thirst for infinite beauty at the sign. Do let the sign awaken the thirst. Right? What are you into? What are you interested in? What are the things in this world that fascinate you? One of the ways I help my students just get reacquainted with their yearning, and we're going to name that yearning before we end this episode, is I just say, what were the things as a child that you collected?
Right.
Did you collect books? Did you collect rocks? Did you collect leaves? Did you collect flowers? Where was your favorite place in your backyard? Where was your favorite place to go on vacation? What was your favorite music to listen to? What were your favorite stories to read? What were your favorite movies to watch? What were your favorite TV shows? What you are attracted to is the beginning of a pilgrimage that, if you are willing to go on it, will lead you to ultimate satisfaction. If, it's a big if you are willing to go on it. And what's the pilgrimage? That's point number 3. To reach everlasting beauty, right? So we're made to slake our thirst at the fountain of infinite beauty. Finite beauty is the sign of that infinite beauty. Don't reject the signs. Don't idolize them. Don't latch on. Don't reject them. Rather, let those signs split open,
Right.
and let them launch you, take you on a pilgrimage to infinite beauty. But how do we get there? This is point number 3. To reach that everlasting beauty, we must pass over from the sign to the reality signified, and here's the part we resist, via or through a painful dying that promises a glorious rising again. This is what Christian liturgy is, right? So the subtitle, Meditations on the Liturgy and Our Hunger for Beauty. Liturgy is the affirmation that we are made to slake our thirst at the fountain of infinite beauty. Liturgy is the affirmation that finite beauty, that's what the beauty of, God willing, we have a beautiful church. God willing, we have a beautiful tabernacle. God willing, we have beautiful flowers around the altar, beautiful stained glass windows, the smell of beautiful incense. All of this sensual beauty, all of this finite beauty is meant to send us on that pilgrimage in the liturgy from the sign to the reality it signifies. And here's the mystery. In the Eucharist, the sign becomes.
I know, I'm getting hungry for Mass right now. Is there a Mass that I can go to right now?
This is the mystery.
And think of the liturgy. Can I?
Yeah, go.
Because the whole liturgy, the word, from the moment we come into to church, we're touching the sacramentality of water. We're touching our body with it. We're taking a position of rest sitting in a pew after we genuflect and we look up at the altar and candles are lit and we're hearing the words and we're getting the types in the Old Testament that are pointing to the reality of Christ.
Yeah.
So words and symbols and stories. And then all of a sudden, concrete realities that you actually eat, like bread and wine, are taken up. And then very unique words are put into and hovering over. And suddenly the signs that we just saw get carried up become the reality of a divine infusion. And then we're like, whoa, I'm going up. Please go. The usher is like, let's go. Then you go up to the altar and then you eat. You take into your very body the sign that has become reality. When I come back from Holy Communion, Christopher, and I'm sure you do too, like I just get into that divine snuggle with Jesus. I'm just in my pew, 6'4" dude with my kids around me, and I'm just like, I got this big cheeseburger smile on my face. I'm like, oh my gosh, you did it again. What, me?
Yeah.
And I love the warmth of the Lord so present, and just the intimacy of my family, and then but the divine intimacy of Him in me.
Glory.
and
Glory.
becoming
How do we
part
take
of
that
me.
in?
It's insane because it's this encounter, physical consummation, molecular breakdown of what has become him who has become my food into my body.
That's
You
where we're
are
going.
what you eat.
In a chapter,
Right?
in a future episode, we'll talk on this chapter, and I'm just going to give you a little preview of where it goes.
Let's do it.
I talk about divinization by digestion. Divinization by digestion. Do you hear how the divine and the body come together there? Like digestion is such a bodily reality. What do we eat? We become what we eat. What do we eat in the Mass? We
Or what you eat. This is crazy.
Did you read the introduction story?
yeah,
Do you want to say anything about the introductory story?
Well, this encounter of a priest with a Hindu woman at a Hindu temple, and him articulating what Catholics believe happens with our God in the Blessed Sacrament. And what do you do with this food once it has become God? She asks him. Actually, we eat it. You eat it? She gasped incredulously. Yes, we do, he affirmed. She then said with no small amount of wonder and amazement, well, that would make you the sanctum sanctorum.
The Holy
The
of Holies.
Holy of Holies.
Because she was talking about the Hindu temple.
Becoming a space for the Holy of Holies. And he said, you call it the Holy of Holies?
Yeah.
He said, we have something. And then he unveils that story. And she puts things together and realizes, do you not know that you are the temple of the Holy Spirit, that you are? Yeah. I mean, when we're done, this is like, this encounter with beauty with a capital B reduces us to a stunned silence and a gratitude, I think. A gratitude like, what?
Yeah.
That you would do this. It's love to the point of folly. It's mad. He's the divine madman. This is crazy.
So let's close by talking about what we call that hunger.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Right? So this is surprising to people. This hunger, this thirst we have. There's a section in the book here, page 26, where I say our hunger has a name. And I quote here from the Catechism. This hunger we find at the core of our humanity for beauty, for everlasting beauty, for infinite beauty, is of divine origin, the Catechism affirms. And this is the quote from the Catechism. Quote, God has placed this hunger in the human heart in order to draw man to the one, capital O, who alone can fulfill it. End quote. But what do we call this hunger? Bill, lay it on us. What do we call this hunger?
Yeah, it is eros. It is this Greek word, little tiny four-letter word, eros, that is the insatiable hunger for the infinite, for something, a desire we have in this world which cannot be satisfied in this world. Eros is an arrow that's meant to shoot straight up into heaven. And it burns, it teases, it stretches, but that's the whole point, is that it's the watermark behind Eros is the infinite.
So how do we, why have we gotten so screwed up with this word eros? Most people, you know this too as a teacher, when we present this word eros, we have to do a lot of work with our students to reclaim its authentic meaning.
Yeah.
I talk in the book about the bastardization of the erotic. What is the bastardization of the erotic? What do we do here?
It's this whole idea, which we've kind of reflected on a little bit, of now. I want it now. I want it to be a temporal fix. I want to be able to wrap my hands on it.
Yeah. I want it in my terms.
On my terms now, I want to possess it. But this is the whole riddle, not the cruel trick, but the cruel trick is that you can't possess it. Because it's pointing to him. And you can't possess him. You can't lock him in. You don't live, he doesn't follow your terms. So not to possess it, but to be possessed by it. But to allow him to pull us on this pilgrimage up and out of ourselves. And all the while through the whole journey, I always had this image of like salmon running upstream, like flowing upstream. As Griegel says, right, as this torrent of beauty washes over us, that's the great adventure. You start grasping at something, especially if you're in a rapids water, you're going to go under real quick. The moment you try to possess the branch, the rock, the tree to stop, you're going to drown. So it's Eros is meant to open to the infinite. So you open yourself and you just go all the way up.
Yeah, and the enemy has taken this word and turned it into most people's minds into something pornographic.
Yeah.
And I was a victim of that. I remember the first time I read the Theology of the Body, I was 23, 24, and this word eros kept coming up, and I had to do this, like, what is he saying? What? Because in my mind, that word was associated with the pornographic, and I would later come to learn that I was confusing the Greek word eros with the Greek word porneia. Right. Mm-hmm. And JP2 is like, no, do not surrender eros to the pornographic realm. Mm-hmm. We have to reclaim it, he says, as the upward impulse of the human spirit. This is a direct quote from JP2.
Yep.
The upward impulse of the human spirit towards what is true, good, and beautiful. Mm-hmm. I love what Francis de Sales says here.
So beautiful, yeah. This is all chapter 1.
This is all chapter 1.
So packed.
But before I get to Francis de Sales, can you read for us on page 27, right down towards 2/3 down? Conte La Mesa reminds us. Raniero Cardinal Conte La Mesa, he's the papal preacher.
Oh, this is fantastic. Right?
He was the papal preacher for JP2, Benedict, and now Francis. Yeah.
Yeah, just quick news flash here. We're quoting John Paul II, Benedict XVI, Cardinal Conte La Mesa. So these are
we're not making this stuff
quite
up.
reliable sources of Orthodox Catholicism. Conte La Mesa reminds us is that Christ has, quote, come to save the world, beginning with Eros, which is the dominant force.
Boom.
Yeah, he names it. Eros is the dominant force. And Christ came to save the world through it, not to throw the wet blanket over it and say, no more of that now, be nice, be good, follow these rules, don't look over there, right? But to get into it and to your point.
And to redeem it.
Redeem and redirect it and free us. I mean, it is so liberating that we can enjoy the gifts and realize, like, it was you I was looking for.
Yeah.
And I'm tracing the outline here. I don't have to reject it. I receive it, but I let it flow right over me.
What a remarkable, just let that sink in. Christ comes to save the world, beginning with Eros. Salvation begins with Eros. What a remarkable statement. Mm-hmm. It means we don't have to be afraid of our deep hunger and thirst. We need to learn how to feel it and direct it towards what we really are hungry for. Mm-hmm. And that's what Christian liturgy is. And then we can find our home in statements like this from St. Francis de Sales. This is page 29, about halfway down. In the words of St. Francis de Sales, Eros is the desire in us that, quote, passionately rushes toward divinization. The desire in us that passionately rushes toward divinization, towards participating in the divine life, towards participation in that beauty, towards eating the sunrise. Mm-hmm. Nothing in this world, no matter what you take that hunger to, it's going to be finite. And what's the purpose of a delicious steak dinner? It's to give you a little glimmer of the infinite feast for which you are made. Mm-hmm. And then de Sales uses such a tender image here, which just sings to my heart. And this is like it's almost like a test of our hearts, the way we receive this, as to how much we are in touch or not in touch with the beauty of the human body, with the goodness of creation, and with our own thirst. And it's the image of a baby at the breast. Would you read that for us, Bill, starting at the bottom of page 29?
Yeah, it's phenomenally tender and beautiful. And I think, Christopher, you're right. It is a bit of a litmus test on how do we have a knee-jerk reaction? Are we a little
start from right there where he says, bottom of page 29.
29.
This is Francis de Sales.
What a union of our hearts there shall be with God there above in heaven. He continues by explaining that in eternity...
No, there's a couple lines still down there.
Oh, I missed it.
Yep. In eternity...
So here's his quote. After these infinite desires of the true good never assuaged in this world, we shall find the living and powerful source thereof.
Okay, so pause there for a moment. So these, I never heard it pronounced assuaged. Is that
Oh, yeah, assuaged. Maybe I went British on you there.
assuaged? I would say
Assuaged.
assuaged.
Okay. Right.
But whatever, tomato. What he's saying is nothing in this world is going to satisfy
Right,
that
can't
thirst.
satisfy the thirst.
But after this world, we have this real possibility of, not just possibility, this is what, if we say yes to the wedding invitation of the Lamb, if we learn how to reorient our desires by God's grace towards what we really hunger and thirst for, this is what we can expect. And he uses this beautiful image.
And notice now that he's using images.
Yeah.
He's using physical encounters and connections. Then, truly, as we see a hungry child closely fixed to his mother's breast, greedily press this dear fountain of most desired sweetness, so that one would think that either it would thrust itself into its mother's breast, or else suck and draw all that breast into itself. So our soul, panting with an extreme thirst for the true good, when she shall find that inexhaustible source in the divinity. Oh, good God.
Oh, good God.
I love it. What, he says, a holy and sweet ardor to be united and joined to the plentiful breasts of the all-goodness, either to be altogether absorbed in it, or have it come entirely into us.
Glory,
Exclamation point.
glory. So isn't it interesting? How is it possible that de Sales could have used this image if he hadn't himself beheld
First-hand experience
this image
of a mother nursing
nursing
baby.
the child?
Yeah. And again, from the natural to the supernatural, to see in the tangible and visible the invisible. This is how you read reality. This is the sacramentality of reality. Don't be afraid of it. Don't shut it down. Oh, I shouldn't have. But to pass through it.
And this is exactly what the enemy is after.
Yeah. And he's doing a good job of shutting it down.
What has been more pornified in our modern world than the breast?
Right.
Dear Jesus, I'm reminded of that line in the gospel, blessed is the womb that bore him, and blessed are the breasts from which he nursed. Lord, please restore in us. This is my prayer for those who would read this book, that their vision would be restored, that they would hear that invitation from Christ, come and become one who sees, and that the pornographic distortion of not just the body, but the world, right? The way we see the body is a window into the way we see the whole world.
Right. It's a microcosm of the whole macrocosm.
Exactly. And if you have a pornified vision of the body, you have a pornified vision of the whole world.
Point.
Lord, may those who read this book, may their eyes be opened, just like the blind man in the gospel. May that, and the image I'm having is like this crusty exterior shell of something like just crumbling and falling away. Like that's the pornified veneer, that just crumbles and falls to dust, and revealed behind that pornographic twisted distortion is the true glory, the true splendor, the true dignity, the true beauty of the human body that allows St. Francis de Sales to see in the infant sucking the milk out of that breast like he wants to take the whole breast into himself. What does he see there? He sees an image of our thirst for the breasts of the all goodness. And the prophet Isaiah himself describes heaven in Isaiah 66 as where we will all drink
Nurse with delight at her
from the
breast.
abundant breast of the new Jerusalem. Right. Glory,
So be open,
glory.
friends watching, listening to our conversation here. Just be open to this and don't be afraid. Don't think you have to shut it down. Good Lord, he's giving us a path. Now, it might mean repetition is the mother of learning. It might mean, okay, wow, this chapter, this is intense. Wow, St. Francis de Sales. Repetition is the mother of learning. Read it again. Read it again. Bring it to prayer. Bring it before the Blessed Sacrament, our Lord present there.
Yeah.
Lord, what are my knee-jerk reactions? What are the little flinches I do here when I read some of this and think this sounds too good to be true? We're quoting no rogue theologians here, but the Holy Fathers, saints in the church. So sit with it, read it again. And by the way, this is just chapter 1. We're hoping to do a few more conversations.
I hope we'll
about
go
this
through the whole
book.
I sure as heck enjoyed it.
Yeah,
And
me
just
too.
by way of, providing a little information here, every chapter ends with a section I call Into the Mystic. You know where I got that.
Oh, Van Morrison.
Van Morrison. And there's just a few questions there to reflect on, to help you enter in to the themes of each chapter. And shameless plug for the book. There's a link in the description, and we can send these books to you in bulk at a really great discount if you want to start a study group or something like that on eating the sunrise. Writing a book is kind of like, this, you conceive something and you're like, I got to birth it. I got to get this out. And it's really, really fun to finally have this book out.
It's so exciting.
And we're getting some great reviews, people who have read it. It's really exciting and edifying to me. And thank you, Lord, for inspiring me with the wisdom in here. It's your wisdom, in as much as it is wisdom, comes from you. I love this line. I'll close here from the other book we were talking about, God is Beauty, which is a retreat that Karol Wojtyła gave before he became John Paul II on art. And he says in there that whether you're a writer, a sculptor, a poet, a musician, you must know that, yes, a stream of beauty flows through you, but you are not beauty. Yeah. Like, that was a real lived experience in writing this book. Like, I was opening myself and I felt like a stream of beauty was flowing through me that didn't come from me. And it's just nice to be the riverbed that allows that river of beauty to flow. I hope it will be a source of great nourishment for those who've read it. Thanks for
Thank you,
chatting with me
Christopher.
about
This is
it.
a great chat. I'm looking forward to some more chats and reading through the rest of your book.
Thanks, brother.